Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So compost is the lifeblood of every garden, and I had some brilliant compost piles, and I make my own compost in all my compost piles. But my compost piles have worn away and broken down over the years, and at the end of last year I took them down, but I haven't had a chance to rebuild them. So today I'm going to rebuild my compost pile, and I'm going to show you how to do a nice composting system, and all for free. So I started gathering all my materials, and the main materials that you're going to need for this are pallets. This is what remains of my old compost piles or my old composting bays. They've all rotten, and then the wood itself is going to become compost, and it's going to become food for bugs when I make some bug hotels using this material. It's a really simple process for these composting bays. I know it's tempting to try and over-engineer these things, but you really don't have to. The thing that you want to do is you want to find pallets that are the same size. So these kind of pallets are ideal. You know, roughly, don't have to be exact, roughly the same size is good enough for me. So those two are fine. And I'm going to build a 2-bay composting system. I don't need anything more than that because I make a lot of chicken compost. I don't need anything more than a 2-bay composting system. Perfectly fine for what I'm doing. Let's clear up some working area and let's get cracking. One thing you might notice is I've gone for concrete slabs on the ground. Now, I found these concrete slabs being given away on Marketplace. Traditionally, I've always gone for compost piles built directly on the soil. There are a couple of drawbacks to having compost piles directly on the soil. They're not massive problems, but for me, they started causing me issues. When you build your compost pile on the soil, after a few years, the compost enriches the soil so much underneath that the hard soil underneath becomes friable and beautiful like compost. So you end up digging yourself into a massive hole, and you end up with a massive crater, so you'd never know where your compost pile ends and your soil begins. You end up taking out more soil than you need. So that was one of the minor problems, and the other problem is I always ended up with rats burrowing in underneath my compost piles. Hopefully with the slabs, at least it'll stop me from digging down underneath. Whether it stops the rats or not, I don't know, but it'll stop me from digging down underneath. I've got my pallets that I'm going to use on the back. Let's find the ones that I'm going to use on the front. Okay, so that one's going there, that one's going there. That's 2, that one's a bit bigger than the rest of them. So if you're wondering why I've just trimmed off that, I'll show you now. Here we go. What I want is that to fit in like that. And then I can screw that into the end there. Beautiful. So that's the rough idea of how it's going to fit together. Now what I do want is I want some kind of canopy on here so I can have my compost protected. But I'm not going to get a chance to complete it today. So let's just get this finished so I can at least start composting, and then I'll build the canopy as I'm going. So let's start putting this thing together. Nice and solid. Sometimes you're going to come across these pallets that don't have a full side. Now these can be a little bit more tricky to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to screw into the big blocks, and then when I put in my reinforcement, when I put in my pillar, then I'll screw in to something that joins it together. You could screw in a piece of timber to there, and then you can screw into that, you know, get a 2x4 and screw into there and then fasten that to it. But I don't think you need to with what I'm going to do, because once I see if you're accurate with that, or you could even just screw through there you know, to join it. That's not going to move anywhere. So you can screw into there. There's a few ways of joining that if you're missing this side piece. Some of the designs of the pallets, because they're made slightly different, they can cause a little bit of an issue, but we can easily work around that, so don't worry about it. See, I was waiting to put the roof on before I start work on this. This is why it's taking me so long to get around to it. But if I carry on waiting, I'm just going to be waiting forever and I'm never going to get it done. So screw straight from this pallet to this to the horizontal pallet into that pallet. We'll join them all together. If you didn't want to screw these in, or you didn't have the drills to screw these in, the way I had my pallet bins set up before was just with a bit of rope. So all I did literally was, when it came to things like this, I'd take the rope and just wrap it around a couple of times. Just wrap it around a couple of times and then just put a really simple knot in it. And that's how my initial compost pile was set up, with just rope as the joints. So I had all four corners just tied in together like that. So it's really simple to do. That's how I'm going to fix the fronts on. It's just not going to be, you can, with these pallet bins, you can over-engineer them, and I don't think there's a need to, because if you wrap them in plastic, one of the things that's going to happen is you're going to leach microplastics into your compost. And if you start putting hinges on these things, yes, it's going to look nice and it's going to be all pretty and work, but as soon as the compost bin starts to rot a little bit, or it starts to get wet and sag a little bit, your doors are going to flop. So rather than all of that, really simple for me is just a couple of bits of rope on the corners, and that's it. You know, really simple knot, put a slip knot in, and then when you want to harvest it, you just come along, pull your snip knot and pull, and it's off. Yeah, that's it. Really simple to do. And that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to just use 4 bits of rope on each pallet, 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom, and that's it. Really simple. And now I can start composting. One thing about the pallets when you want to look out on, so you see that HT, so it's a heat treated pallet, so it means it's kiln dried. It's not something that's got chemicals in it. So some of the blue pallets, some of the red pallets, you can see a lot of paints on them. You can see a lot of preservatives in them. You don't want that on your compost piles. Try and use these ones. Yes, they will rot a little bit faster, but you're going to get nice clean compost. And this compost pile is perfect for me. I'm just going to leave it like this, and now I can start composting. I will eventually put a canopy on here, and I'll fix it to somehow, I'll fix a platform to that treehouse, and it'll be a platform from the treehouse onto here. Let's see if that works, and we can have an extended decking from the treehouse onto this side. Let's see if that works or not. I don't know if it will, but we'll get on with it. It's taken me long enough to put this together. Let's see how long it takes me to get the rest of it together. Get your compost piles ready, start filling them. I'll do a video in the next couple of weeks on how to build a nice compost pile, what materials that you actually need, and how fast do you need all your materials in one go, or can you build them slowly. But first and foremost, I've got my compost pile ready, I can start composting. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe for regular updates. If you want to support our channel, you could always become a patron, but I'll see you on the next one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.